College sports wield some of the most passionate fan bases in the world. Whether it's because of the diehard college students wreaking havoc in the student section, alumni who bleed their school's colors, or just the nature of 20-year-old kids competing at a high level, there's a unique level of emotion across all NCAA sports. Today in this video, we're going to cover the most hated players in college basketball history. Something so enraging about an annoying player who can back up everything they say on the court. First player on this list is arguably the dirtiest, Grayson Allen. He played for Duke from 2014 to 2018 and is well regarded as the dirtiest player of all time. To make things worse, he was a very good player and he played for a program that was also widely hated. Surprisingly, his freshman season, he wasn't involved in any drama or dirty plays. It all began in his sophomore season where he broke out as a player, averaging 21.6 points per game and shooting 41.7% from three. Now, I'm not sure if he got arrogant and thought he could get away with it or if he's just a straight up idiot, but the first incident took place on February 8th in 2016 against Louisville, where he blatantly trips Ray Spalding after coming down with a rebound. He was assessed an intentional foul, but this was truly just the beginning. Only 2 weeks later, he then tripped Florida State's Xavier Rathan Mays in the final seconds of a Duke win. Grayson was quoted on the incident in the Fayetteville Observer after the game saying, he, as in the player from Florida State, wanted to keep playing physical, so I tried to walk away from it as he was grabbing me. We ended up tangling up and falling. I'm sorry, Grayson, but that's not a tangle, buddy. Because these incidents happened in only a 2-week span, Grayson became known as the dirtiest player in college basketball and really became a viral sensation overnight, while putting to rest any debate in the eyes of the public that the first trip was unintentional. Before the beginning of his junior season, ESPN did a big story on him where he hoped to finally put to rest all of this controversy he had stirred over that 2-week stretch in February of his sophomore season. They basically just talk about his character and how he's a good person and he made a couple mistakes. But unfortunately, Grayson just couldn't help himself because he does it again in his junior season, this time in a game versus Elon in December of 2016, and it's even more blatant than the first two. He was suspended indefinitely by the university and Coach K stripped him of his captain status. The suspension only lasted 1 game, and only a few weeks later, he almost tripped the Boston College player that some people claim, again, we don't know for sure, but to me, it looks pretty blatant as well. Thankfully, he didn't make solid contact. The rest of his junior season played out. He had a couple more plays that were questionable at best, but it wasn't until his senior year that he got back to his usual antics on the court. In the ACC tournament of his senior year, he hip checks a player from North Carolina, which to me may be the most egregious one of all because it could have seriously hurt that player. After the game, Coach K defended him saying, "Do you think that was the only time someone was hipped in the game? If you look in the low post, it's going on all the time. So it happened at half court, they got it, it's done, and that didn't win or lose the game." Now that's a pretty weird response from Coach K if you ask me. That wasn't a normal hip check, that was a dirty play. I wish we could spend more time on Grayson Allen's pro career, but what I will say is that he ended up getting ejected during his first Summer League game for 2 very questionable fouls on Grant Williams, and he took out Alex Caruso on a hard foul last year. It's safe to say that Grayson Allen has a long history of these kind of plays. Even just this past year in December of 2022, he elbowed DeMar DeRozan in the back. DeRozan said after the game that if it was Boban, he wouldn't have thought a thing, but knowing Grayson Allen's track record, he felt that it was intentional. Even the Bulls color commentator Stacey King was pretty fed up with the play.
When you have a reputation for this stuff and you add a little extra,
it's a chump move. Seriously.
Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but my overall assumption of Grayson is that he's a decent guy off the court. He just gets unhinged and rageful and makes boneheaded decisions that he instantly regrets. Does that make it okay? Absolutely not. The plays he makes are still dirty as can be, and I'm surprised he's lasted as long as he has in the NBA. Next, we have my favorite player on this list, Marshall Henderson. The reason I love Marshall is because he's so antagonizing that it's borderline comical, and he truly gives 0 Fs. Love him or hate him, he's one of the most entertaining players to ever come through the sport with one of the greenest lights I've ever seen from a college basketball player. He was truly ready to let anything fly from beyond the arc, averaging over 12 3-point attempts per game in his 2 seasons at Ole Miss. But what many of you don't know is Marshall Henderson's career began at Utah in 2009, where he averaged 11.8 points per game and had his first controversy where he punched a BYU player at the end of a game. He was suspended 1 game for the incident, ended up leaving Utah after the season and transferring to Texas Tech, where he sat out the whole season due to transfer rules. He then transferred to South Plains, leading them to a JUCO championship in 2012. Henderson then transferred to Ole Miss, which is where he became nationally known for his antics and taunting of opposing crowds. On January 29th, 2013, Ole Miss defeated Auburn 63-61, capped by 2 game-winning free throws from Marshall. Immediately as the final buzzer sounded, he went right over to the Auburn student section, flaunted his jersey, and shouted who knows what. This was an iconic moment in NCAA basketball history and one of the more popular GIFs you'll see flying around on Twitter from time to time. He's literally getting flicked off from point blank and doesn't care. A few weeks later, he was back in the news with more antics, this time defeating Florida to win the SEC tournament championship, Ole Miss's first SEC title since 1981. After hitting a 3 to give Ole Miss their largest lead of the game, Marshall did the gator chomp up the sidelines during a timeout, which he said afterwards was something he dreamt of the night before. He also hit the land shark after hitting another transition 3. In the locker room afterwards, he was asked about how it feels to be only second team All-SEC, yet the tournament champions and the tournament MVP. His response? That the SEC coaches are losers. He truly had a me versus the world attitude and it fueled him. Ole Miss was only a 12 seed in March Madness, but they upset 5th seed Wisconsin before losing to 13th seeded LaSalle. Unfortunately, Marshall Henderson's emotions again got the best of him as he flipped off fans on his way to the locker room. The NCAA would go on to publicly reprimand him for these actions, and he was suspended that summer by Ole Miss for violating the team's drug policies. He'd return for his senior year and have another solid season, but not nearly as much drama as his junior year. A smaller name that I couldn't help but include on this list is Wisconsin's super senior Brad Davidson. A mini Grayson Allen, Davidson has gotten his fair share of criticism in his career over similar tripping incidents and dirty plays. I'm sure again he's probably a pleasant human off the court, but in his years at Wisconsin there's too many cheap shots to count, and to be honest they aren't nearly as talked about as Grayson Allen. Let me give you a couple examples. 2018 he hits Marquette's Joey Hauser in the private parts on a screen, where he claims afterwards he didn't try because Hauser's a family friend, and I would believe him. But then in 2020 he also hits Iowa's Connor McCaffrey in the privates as well, coming off a screen. McCaffrey had this to say about him afterwards: he grabbed me right in the blank where you don't want to be grabbed. He does that, he's marked for that. He's the type of player, unfortunately, who feels the need to do that stuff, and tonight he cost them the game. But then again in 2022, he did the same thing to Michigan's Hunter Dickinson. Now this one's hard to tell as it may have been in the rib/stomach, but the point remains. Here's Brad Davidson trying to tweak a Minnesota player's ankle as he comes down from a rebound in 2019. He's one of the dirtiest players I've ever seen play the game, and for some reason he's not really remembered for that. But to be honest, let's move on and not waste any more time on a player who isn't even fun to hate. Adam Morrison played 3 years for Gonzaga, averaging 28.1 points per game and shooting 42.8% from 3 his final season. I really don't think much of Adam Morrison's hate is all that warranted. Sure, he was an emotional player, but he wasn't much beyond that. The iconic moment of his career was when Gonzaga blew a 17-point lead. Morrison broke down crying on the court after the game, and the sight was immediately sealed into the memory of college basketball fans everywhere. He got absolutely hammered for it. He was from Spokane, a Gonzaga kid through and through, and they just choked away an appearance in the Elite Eight. I truly don't think you can blame him for reacting the way he did. The more I researched Adam Morrison and his career, the more I began to like him. Yes, he was polarizing, but I began to appreciate his passion for the game and truly how great of a scorer he was. I wish it would have worked out for him in the NBA. Tyler Hansbrough, aka Psycho T, was a 6'9" forward for North Carolina from 2005 to 2009. After averaging 22.6 points per game and 10.2 rebounds in his junior season, he was named the unanimous National Player of the Year. And the hatred for Tyler Hansbrough throughout his collegiate career is one you can't really put your finger on. The best way I can sum it up is that he played with an immense amount of intensity and emotion. Plus, he was kind of unorthodox and definitely not pretty to watch. It also didn't help that he played for UNC and won a lot in his career, including a national title in his senior season. There's certain players that just kind of bother you on the court, and to put it plainly, he was one of those players. That leaves us with our top 2 most hated players in NCAA Division I basketball history, and it is of no coincidence that they are both again from Duke: JJ Redick and Christian Laettner. Let's start with Laettner, who is considered by most the best player in Duke history, if not all of college basketball history. Known most for the stomp and the shot, which occurred both in the same game, Christian Laettner was again one of those players that the masses love to hate. And why wouldn't they? He appeared in 4 straight Final Fours in his 4 seasons at Duke, averaging 21.5 points per game, including back-to-back national titles in his junior and senior year. The whole 30 for 30 installment was dedicated to the hatred of him, titled I Hate Christian Laettner. Our final player on this list is JJ Redick, a shooting guard that played for Coach K and Duke from 2002 to 2006. While he was a great player all 4 years, his senior season was his best, averaging 26.8 points per game and shooting 42% from three. JJ Redick is the prototypical Duke hatred as well. A cocky player that's good looking, really good at basketball, plays for Duke, and wins. JJ has been pretty vocal about his behavior in college over the past couple years, stating that he was sort of a prick in an interview with Grantland in 2013. And I have to say, he's probably one of the more well-liked NBA media personalities now in 2023. He almost quit basketball his sophomore year after his number continued to leak over and over again, receiving an estimated 50 to 75 text messages and calls a day from opposing fans that hated him. He even said on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast that he
changed your number at times, like your cell phone number.
My sophomore year, I've probably changed it 10 or 15 times.
Yes, JJ was somewhat arrogant on the court. He knew how to get opposing teams and crowds going and then would back it up with his play. However, it was never anything really crazy. Some head bobs here, a wave there, but his excellence was maddening enough that even a little head bob sent opposing fan bases into an enraged spiral. His most notorious beef was actually with the Maryland fan base. It went so far that when Duke played at Maryland during Redick's sophomore season, the Maryland student section went crazy. It was truly as hostile of an environment as it gets in college basketball. JJ ended up balling out in that game, scoring 26 points and icing the game with 2 free throws as Maryland fans chanted F you JJ over and over again. From Redick's perspective, his antics and his attitude were more of a reaction to the unwarranted hate that he was given for being white, playing for Duke, and being good at basketball. One of his older sisters sums it up best, saying, "They thought you were an asshole, and you said, okay, I'll be an asshole." So there you have it, 7 players that I consider to be some of the most hated in the history of college basketball. Who do you think I missed? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, then you'll like this video I just made on how far each seed has advanced in March Madness history. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on the hardwood.